While Domino's is nowadays known as a convenient meal option, what many don't realize is that they had a very dark chapter in their past, which we'll be discussing today. Throughout the mid to late 80s, a large upswing of brands from all industries began conceptualizing mascots to help market their products. Their mileage varied, with many of these ideas being phased out as quickly as they debuted due to poor reception. Of the more successful from this era, however, was a character created for Domino's Pizza simply referred to as the Noid. The claymation creature's gimmick was that of a thief, interfering with the chain's then staple 30 minutes or less deliveries. The mischievous rabbit-human hybrid was dressed in a red onesie, with a black N inscribed on his chest over a white circle. The Noid was created in 1986 by Will Vinton Studios, the same animation house behind California Raisins and the film Caroline. The commercials, which retain their signature claymation style, depict the character's slapstick escapades, attempting to destroy pizzas before they could reach customers. The marketing effort was by and large a success, with many to this very day still fondly remembering its slogan, "Avoid the Noid." The character quickly received a slew of toys and merchandise even, as well as 2 separate video game adaptations. There was even a planned Saturday morning children's cartoon. However, despite his popularity, the ad campaign abruptly ended in 1986, just 3 years after its conception. The character was also retired entirely, with Domino's making little to no reference to the mascot for the following decade. It was as if they preferred he'd be forgotten to time, which came as a surprise to viewers who had become accustomed to Noid-related commercials lighting up their television sets. In online discussions reflecting upon that initial run, many wondered why the company had lost faith in the Noid so quickly, especially given how ambitious their previous tie-in efforts were. Some speculated that perhaps merchandising wasn't as successful as Domino's would have liked. While plausible, this didn't align with the Noid's actual performance amongst customers, who viewed him very favorably. In reality, there was a far more explicit reason the chain felt inclined to drop the character. An incident so dark that it tarnished the mascot permanently in the eyes of its creator. And this catastrophic event involves the story of a real-life man named Kenneth Lamar Noid. We'll learn more about him after a brief word from our sponsor. Do you like your hair? I know I do, but the sad truth is that 2 out of 3 guys will experience some form of male pattern baldness by the time they're 35. And while it's hard to get back once it's gone, the best way to prevent hair loss is to do something about it while you still have hair left. Namely, Keeps. With Keeps, a licensed doctor will review your information online and recommend the right hair loss treatment plan for you. Then your treatment will be shipped to your house directly every 3 months. It's as simple as that. And if you have any questions, you can message your Keeps doctor 24/7 with any inquiries or concerns you may have along the way. Keeps offers generic versions of the FDA-approved medications for hair loss, which makes it affordable and effective. Just remember that prevention is key, and it takes between 4 to 6 months to start seeing results, so it's important you act fast. So if you're ready to take action and prevent hair loss, go to keeps.com/GFM. or click the link in the description to receive 50% off your first order. That's keeps.com/GFM. The downfall of Domino's most prolific commercial series begins with a man that shared their mascot's name, Kenneth Lamar Noid. Born in 1967, the 20-year-old lived with his family in his hometown of Albany, Georgia. For the early years of his life, things seemed to be going well for the young man. That was until 1986 when Domino's began promoting their Noid mascot. As one may expect, light mockery was bound for anyone who happened to share a name with the character. However, while most would simply ignore the coincidence, Kenneth began to feel particularly ostracized. The commercials enraged him to the point that he began ranting about the spots to his family. He went so far as to claim that the company, specifically its founder, Tom Monahan, had targeted him, alleging they were routinely spying on his apartment, as well as being personally antagonistic with the Avoid the Noid slogan. This paranoia would continue for the next 3 years, as the commercials became more and more prominent on television and the Noid became a household name. To put it simply, it was too much for Kenneth. Eventually, he was so fed up with their perceived harassment that he sought to enact revenge against the company. This is when Kenneth decided to bring his pizza-related grievances to the public. January 30th, 1989 began as Mondays typically do. Quiet. However, that peaceful morning was disrupted when at around 11 a.m., Kenneth entered the local Domino's wielding a .357 Magnum revolver. With the utmost attention of the chain's workers, Mr. Noid then held the 2 employees at gunpoint, taking both hostage before ordering them to contact the company's headquarters. It was through that call he demanded $100,000 in cash, as well as a white limousine to use as a getaway vehicle. To prove he wasn't joking around, Mr. Noid fired the first of 4 shots into the floor, leading authorities to be called. When police arrived at the scene, they were able to establish contact with Kenneth through the phone. It was then that they learned the man's bizarre motive firsthand. He told them that the chain's founder had not only gang-stalked him, but even entered his apartment without permission. Law enforcement struggled to negotiate with the 20-year-olds, finding him to be unpredictable. At times, he'd appear rational, only to immediately become unresponsive. In exchange for the hostages, Mr. Noid demanded them to retrieve a science fiction book titled The Widow's Son. However, once they obtained the novel, he recanted the offer. With the standoff reaching the 6-hour mark, fatigue began to take its toll on Kenneth. Famished, the gunman revealed to his victims that he was hungry, to which the 2 offered to serve him the chain's signature item. They prepared 2 pizzas for their captor, placing all the toppings available on it. Mr. Noid sat down to eat, and in order to do so, placed the weapon on his lap. This gave an opportunity for both hostages to run out of the restaurant and escape. Realizing he no longer had any leverage for demands, minutes later he would finally emerge from Domino's and surrender. He was quickly apprehended and charged with extortion, kidnapping, aggravated assault, as well as the possession of a firearm during a crime. He was held in jail on $250,000 bond, spending those next months awaiting trial. Before this point, the close association of Domino's mascot with Kenneth's name was only a delusion, but following the incident, it became a reality. The story and potential headlines were simply too sensational for journalists to ignore, as titles like "Domino's Can't Avoid Mr. Noid" illustrated the comedy of the situation. Even Reed Miller, the area's local police chief, jokingly described Kenneth as being paranoid to the press. Because of this negative publicity, the character's reputation was seen by the chain as tarnished beyond repair, and within the next year was retired entirely. Interestingly, this would only be the start in a string of bad news for Domino's. You see, the Noid campaign also boasted the restaurant's 30-minute or less guarantee. In fact, the mascot was intended to be the manifestation of issues that arose with such speeds. The problem was, this policy placed a heavy restraint and intense pressure on their drivers, leading to a plethora of auto accidents and even vehicular manslaughter cases as a result. For example, the same year as the hostage incident, a Domino's employee ran a red light and hit another vehicle, resulting in the victim suffering from severe spinal and head injuries. She filed a suit against the company and was awarded $79 million in damages. In another instance, Domino's agreed to pay $2.8 million to the family of an Indiana woman killed by one of their speedy delivery drivers. By 1993, there were approximately 300 Domino's-related auto accident cases, causing the 30 minutes or less policy to be disbanded entirely. It wasn't just the chain who was facing problems, however, as things didn't get much better for Kenneth Lamar Noid either. Per court orders, the deranged man was ordered to undergo psychiatric treatment, to which they determined he was not only a paranoid schizophrenic, but also found him incapable to stand trial. Kenneth was found not guilty by reason of insanity, and rather than being sentenced, he was transferred to the Georgia Mental Health Institute, where he would stay for the next 3 months. Following his release, he he relocated to Tallahassee, Florida, where he would live for the next 5 years before committing suicide in his apartment at the young age of 28. And that appeared to officially seal the fate of the once iconic pizza mascot. Interestingly enough though, in the past year, Domino's has actually revived the Noid character, likely to cash in on the wave of nostalgia for the time period. There's brand new commercials, a social media campaign starring him, a collab with Crash Bandicoot, and even Noid-related NFTs being sold by Domino's. So as the chain attempts to turn the character into a current-day meme, they've done their best to have the world forget about the tragic story of its original cancellation. Kenneth Lamar Noid and the hostage incident involving him have largely been forgotten to time, as people once again only think of the red-suited gremlin when uttering its 4-letter name. And there you have the story behind why Domino's got rid of the Noid as well as their 30 minutes or less policy. And with that, I think I'll end the video here. So until next time, thanks for watching.
Yo Noid, it's bad enough that they gave him his own game, but to put yo in front of it to market it to the young hip crowd is just flat out lame.